So there's 4 key ideas that I'm going to talk about. The first, as we've already talked about, is that inclusion is an experience, and it also involves behavior, values, policies, and practices. Together, these combine in a process that is cyclical and dynamic. Inclusion occurs when a person experiences or feels it, and it occurs collectively when many people in a group feel it. And those experiences and feelings are a result of what individuals, leaders, and organizations do. Together, the experiences and the values, policies, practices, and behavior combine to form the process of inclusion. We need to think about and pay attention to both components and to their relationships. Second, inclusion is an ongoing practice. It doesn't have an end state. As an ongoing and cyclical process, it's never done. So we want to encourage you to think about the practice of inclusion as what individuals, leaders, and organizations do to bring the experience and process of inclusion to life on an ongoing basis. It has to be proactive, and it never ends. That ongoing practice requires a professional foundation, a framework for praxis. The renowned educator Paulo Freire once said that praxis is reflection and action directed on the structures to be transformed. That's a key reason why we're actually all here today and tomorrow. To be most useful to business as change agents for inclusion, we need to be clear about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it. We need theory and research on the relevant processes involved, and we need that theory and that research and those frameworks to guide what we're doing. We need to keep in mind those frameworks, and they should have the power to transform what we do. Third, we believe that the practice of inclusion needs to be systemic and integrative. This model illustrates what we mean by systemic and integrative. As you can see, inclusion involves multiple levels of analysis and action. We've already talked about the individual level experience of inclusion at the base. Here, you can also see how what happens at the higher levels flows down, so that inclusive ideologies and values in society as a whole can affect how organizations address inclusion and whether and how they incorporate inclusive climates and what those climates look like. The organizational context then affects the way that leadership is defined and expressed and what leaders do to be inclusive. This in turn affects the norms and behaviors in groups and whether and how each of us demonstrates inclusive behaviors. It also flows back up. My individual experience can affect the groups that I work in and that I belong to and how those groups function. It affects the requirements for leadership and ultimately what happens in the organization and in the larger society. Note that in this model, leadership plays a pivotal role and can help the flow in both directions. Fourth, and finally for today, inclusion needs to be co-constructed. Inclusion is more likely to happen, it's more likely to be achieved when it's given meaning and brought to life together with others, kind of like what you were starting to do today, through a dialogic process of exploration, of communication, of learning, and of ongoing meaning-making.